Hey everybody, I'm Nina Crowley. I'm Seeka's Professional Affiliations and Education Manager, and I'm proud to be here today with Dr. Mary Litchford, who's a dietitian and an international speaker, author, everything on nutrition assessment, nutrition-focused physical exam. She's a really big proponent of expanding the role of dietitians, and she's just come out with a new book on sharpening your edge in nutrition-focused physical exam. And we've known each other for a while in the weight management space, and she's up in North Carolina, so we're pretty close. So thank you for joining me today.
Well, you're certainly welcome.
I'm really excited to talk to you about what I'm hoping is a, really lively conversation. I know I could hear you talk about this forever, but something you and I, met up at the recent ASMBS meeting and started talking about the role of quality weight loss and really what is a sustainable weight loss. And we talked about muscle mass and preserving muscle mass and some of the surgical, medical, nutritional weight loss programs. We've talked about fat mass. We've talked about advancing practice. And so, yeah, I was hoping we could talk about quality weight loss and muscle and physical assessment and all the things you can share with us in just 25, 30 minutes. Can we do it?
Well, that's asking a lot, but there's so much out there about the role of personalized nutrition care, precision medicine. And so we want to be more precise than perhaps we were in the 20th century. So my first question to you is, are you practicing 21st century personalized nutrition care for quality weight loss? So we're narrowing it down to this concept of quality weight loss. Now, I want you to think about your practice, and I want you to think about the data points that you use, and maybe people in the medical practice you work with use, to measure a quality diet and quality weight loss. You might think of height, weight, BMI. You might think of lab tests. I've talked a lot about that, written about that as well, vital signs, food intake. But what about strength and muscle mass? Do we have a measure of actual total muscle mass? Well, we really don't. We use indirect measures like grip strength. We use a battery of tests, such as how fast do you walk or chair rises. And so what we want to use is data points that we can measure objectively, because, Lord Kelvin said, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it. And a lot of the things we use are subjective measures. And some of the measures we've used in the past, such as BMI, are being discussed with the AMA and a lot of different professional groups as perhaps not the best alternative, because it doesn't differentiate between muscle mass and fat mass. And those two things are very important. So I want you to think about, what is quality weight loss? And to the client, it might mean just the number on the scale or the size of the clothing. It might mean something else to them, because our clients are pretty savvy, that get on the internet and read about body composition, but they still are looking at that number on the scale perhaps. And so is that really quality weight loss? Or is it sustainable weight loss? Is that what quality is all about? Is keeping that weight off? Because what do we see? We see people that lose weight and gain weight and lose weight and gain weight. And they're so frustrated and they're so discouraged, and they're really not doing themselves a good service from a health perspective, because fat regain is such a big problem. We don't regain muscle mass. And we learned that from the Biggest Loser TV show, and the research that followed was that while these individuals were in this intense program, they lost weight and they built up some muscle. But once they returned to their home life and their jobs, and they weren't on the TV show anymore, then many of them regained a considerable amount of weight, mostly from fat, and their total caloric intake decreased. And so we don't want that for our clients. We want them to have sustainable weight loss that will improve the quality of their life, improve those markers of chronic disease, and improve their mobility and just their overall functional health. So back to what you're using to measure quality weight loss, what that means to me is that it's loss of more fat than muscle. Now, we know that when you lose weight, you lose fat, you lose muscle, and you lose fluids. And so how are you going to differentiate what is fat loss and what is muscle mass loss? Now, there are lots of theories about what is the best way to do this.
Right.
And some of the options are very expensive and unrealistic in your clinical practice. If you used an MRI or a CT scan or a DEXA scan, those tend to be more costly, and those aren't portable either. And so those aren't always realistic, even though you see that in the literature, that that's really the
Sure.
way we should focus on that, on determining the difference between muscle and fat. And then there's some ultrasound tools that are portable. They use a transducer, that's the apparatus they put against the skin to measure different muscle areas and muscle groups. And there are some programs out there that are available. We're interested in total muscle mass, not just muscle mass in a specific area. And so those might have some limitations as well.
And some specialized training.
And some specialized training, absolutely. And same with the MRI and the CT and the DEXA. You've got to have special equipment, special training. Some of these options, there's radiation exposure. Some of them have subject size limitations as well. Even though they're options for individuals with larger bodies, that machine may not be available in that particular setting. And so there are lots of limitations and disadvantages as well as advantages. But let's think about what's going to be realistic. Now, one of the things we see in the bariatric space is use of scales that incorporate some technology called BIA, or bioelectrical impedance analysis. And I have a BIA scale in my bathroom, but it's not a high-tech scale. But I found it interesting to use over the years. But there are some scales out there that use a variety of data points in addition to the measurements that they're collecting. So they use what we call machine learning data to compare DEXA and MRI data to what kind of measurements they're getting through the BIA. And these organizations have developed algorithms through this machine learning, and we see this throughout medicine, to predict what the actual mass difference is in fat mass versus muscle mass.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are options like this. And in a recent paper, Making Recommendations in Critical Care, did highlight all these different tools that are available for them, including BIA, the ultrasound, and the imaging. Now, the one that is new is digital anthropometry, and this was new to me. I learned about it this summer from an NIH program where they're using digital anthropometry to predict percent fat mass. And they're not using it yet to predict muscle mass from what I gather. But they use a 3D optical scanner. And if you've ever ordered clothing on the internet and they say, you know, we'll just take a picture of yourself, maybe a front, a side, and a back, and we'll tell you what size you'd wear. Well, that's kind of how it started.
Similar
And
technology.
now they do multiple measurements and they're estimating fat mass. So I think we'll see more of that. Now they use the algorithms as well through machine learning. But
Yeah.
there's some questions you need to ask when you talk with these companies is where are they getting this additional data that they're using? Are they using total muscle mass or are they using fat-free mass? Because those things
Yeah.
aren't the same.
Well, I think
And
that's also been a thing, when BIA has been around for, 25 years or so, and some of the studies that are, older studies had single frequency, but now we have much better, multi-frequency technology. I feel like the BIA world has changed a lot, and now they do have like your experience, the home scales where people can, kind of get a general estimate and maybe do that more frequently. But I think it's, also important to think about those better quality, either research grade or clinical grade devices that, are in the doctor's offices, and making sure people do get a good reading from one of those higher quality devices where they're actually getting, the muscle mass, where ours is validated with MRI. And again, you're not going to, as you pointed out perfectly, you're not going to do those in clinical practice frequently for all patients. But when we compare, our BIA with muscle mass estimates from MRI, we're at, 97, 98% accuracy. And I do think that is plenty good enough for a feasible clinical practice.
well, and I think as dietitians, we need to ask questions about what is the research that supports this technology and what actually are you measuring? Because I
Mhm.
was talking with someone, one of the reps from a company with the digital anthropometry, and I asked the question of how are you getting your data on muscle mass? And the response was, oh, we use fat-free muscle mass. Well, fat-free muscle mass is skeletal mass, non-skeletal muscle mass, organs, connective tissue, and bone. So that's a lot of stuff. And I said, well, that's different than total skeletal muscle, which is what you told me a minute ago. And he said, oh, no, no, it's all the same thing. And I thought,
Okay.
well, I'm not talking to the right person because he doesn't know that that's different. And then the term soft mass or lean mass is sometimes used, and that's all your lean tissues. And so it excludes bone and fat, but it includes water, any type of protein that's in the body that's not muscular. It includes non-fat lipids and any soft
Mhm.
tissues and minerals. So some things don't contribute a whole lot, but it's not all the same thing. So
Right.
you need to be sure you know what you're asking about. Because with
Good point.
quality weight loss, total muscle mass matters. Now, what are we seeing in the weight loss space, the bariatric space? We are seeing an influx of new medications to
Mm.
help people with regain, to help people with weight loss. We're offering a lot of different options, and they can be used either separately or together, so adjunct therapies.
Right.
And so we're giving people a lot of options, but we still want to preserve that muscle mass. And we don't have good data on the new medications' ability to preserve muscle mass. If more fat is lost and muscle is preserved, that's great. But if we're losing a lot more muscle mass, then what do we know about muscle mass? Well, muscle mass plus exercise and activity are two big factors in
Yeah.
determining how many calories you need every day. And so, from a practical standpoint, um, our clients want to lose weight, but they also want to have quality diets and a quality life and enjoy the foods that they do eat.
Right.
And lean muscle mass accounts for more than 50% of your caloric intake. Fat accounts for a very small percentage. So when you add more fat to the total body habitus, then that means, and you've lost your muscle, that means you need to consume fewer calories. And we know that that is discouraging. And so our
Mhm.
goal
Yeah,
with our weight loss is to preserve muscle and to lose fat. Now, how do we do that? Well,
exactly.
that
Tell
is
us.
that's another area of research, a whole nother topic. Having high quality protein in the diet is essential. We know that there are complete proteins and incomplete proteins, and we know that getting all of those amino acids every day is very important for not only building muscle tissue, but also in preserving it.
Mhm.
And so we want to be sure we're getting enough protein. Now, I really like the studies that look at having an equal amount of protein at every meal, the 30-30-30 approach. And even though that wasn't developed for a bariatric population, it is probably a more reasonable approach and not typical of what the way Americans eat. We tend to have meals with very little protein and meals with a whole lot of protein.
You got it.
And there's some research that shows that maybe it isn't so important, but having those quality meals every time you have a meal, I think is a good habit because it's those daily habits that really result in that quality weight loss. And that's really what we want to look at. So, what are you going to do as a dietitian in terms of your practice? Well, you can always incorporate a nutrition focused physical exam to look at loss of muscle mass. There are a number of tools to assess frailty, sarcopenia, um, the and mobility. And sometimes someone else in your clinical arena will be collecting that data. And so, looking at functional status and muscle strength, remember that loss of muscle mass occurs before you lose the strength. And so, we want to be sure that we're measuring muscle mass. That seems to be the most important tool for us. And so, with these new approaches to measuring weight and doing body composition at the same time, and with the use of these algorithms that are developed through machine learning, I think we're going to see in the next 5 years a tremendous increase in the quality of the data that's
Mm.
available. But just like anything else in this, in our uh, clinical practice, we want to look closely at the data. We want to ask the right questions and
Right.
be sure that what we are using actually measures something that is useful to us.
Mm.
And if what we're collecting doesn't really measure what we want to measure, which is total muscle mass, then how can we challenge our industry partners to develop technologies and to refine what they're doing to better meet the needs of our clients?
Mary, what are some of those nutrition focused physical assessment techniques for sarcopenia and muscle that you've counseled folks on how to use in the clinic?
Well, I do I look at body composition using palpation of the face, the hands, the upper body, and usually just the gastrocnemius muscle, so the calf muscle. And if you see a person more than once, then you can get a sense of what their muscle mass is like. Is it very weak? Is it stringy? Is it soft? Do they have a lot of muscle tone? And it's going to impact their ability for their everyday activities of daily living. So if their muscles in their legs are weak, and you can tell that by palpation, you can also tell that by other tools, such as um, doing a battery of tests that include chair rises. You have to do so many in a certain window of time to do. Um, Now it's just escaped me, to do a walking test and how
Hmm.
long it takes them to walk from one point to another. You can use a dynamometer for grip strength. That is not helpful if the person has arthritis or if they've had a stroke and have a lot of weakness in that hand. when you're looking at the hands, you want to look at the interosseous muscle, which is between the fingers, but primarily between the thumb and the index finger, the areas that you look at, and the thenar, which is the muscle that goes from your thumb down to the top of your wrist. If these muscles are very weak, then people can't open things. And so then it becomes much easier to eat a low quality diet of ultra processed foods.
Wow.
You don't have to cook if you can't open things.
Never thought about
And
that. Wow. That's
it really does make a difference. And people lose the strength in their hands with aging, but you also lose those muscles in your hands that will really impact your ability to cook and your ability to not only cook food, but to clean up afterwards. So,
wow.
those are important things. Your ability to chew, looking at your master muscle, which connects the top of your skull to your jaw, their ability to chew. And what we see in people that are losing muscle mass is that it doesn't happen just overnight, unless they're critically ill. It can seem like that. But it's a slow loss, and they get so that they eat a more refined diet. They don't always have the quality foods because they're difficult to chew, or they may be just difficult to prepare. So all of those things impact the person's ability to have a quality life and to sustain their weight loss. If they're not able to get up and walk or to participate in any kind of physical activity, of course, that's going to impact their total caloric intake. So in terms of the sarcopenia data, there are specific criteria. One is a calf circumference, and you can use that as a criteria to address sarcopenia. And there are different measurements or cut points for individuals of different ethnicities because the numbers are a little bit different. And
this is all precision. This is all about precision nutrition and precision medicine, though. And I think personalizing, I think what's interesting to me in hearing you talk about this too is that people are often looking for one number, right? And I think we can learn from history with maybe the BMI is that, hey, this one number is really not robust enough to tell us all we need to know. And that I don't know that we're looking for one number, but kind of taking all of these points together, looking at the muscle mass as a total, looking at the segmental muscle mass in each appendage, right? Looking at some of these grip strength and ways that you can do the nutrition focused exam, taking all of that together can really give you a much better look at what is going on inside of someone and then connect that to what they can actually do about it, right? Because it's one thing to get all this data and then it's another, this is not even incorporating all of the behavioral stuff and how to actually make changes to our diet and to our exercise, but really taking that objective data and formulating that into a change in clinical practice for the patient.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's what we want. We want to give our clients information that's useful to them and can help them meet their goals.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I feel like I have 1,000 more questions for you, but maybe we'll have to do this again soon. And I really appreciate your kind of overview on, muscle mass and how to measure that, how to incorporate that into clinical practice. And yeah. So any last thoughts before we end for today? Or
Well, I just want
resources?
to challenge our audience to really consider your current clinical practice. Are you practicing in the 20th century when we didn't have all this technology? Or are you practicing that personalized medicine and personalized nutrition care of the 21st century? And what we have available today is not the end. We're going to see lots more technology. So it's important to stay current, go to the professional meetings, get involved with professional groups to network and to learn about a lot of these new things that are out there for you that will really make a difference in the quality of lives for the clients that we serve.
Oh, that's beautiful. And how can they best reach out to you, Mary, if they want to stay connected with you?
Well, I'm on the internet. I have a website called CASE, CASE software.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter, but I can't remember what my handle is. It's my last name and something else, some other number. And so
Okay.
you can contact Nina and she can forward your email to me, and I'll be glad to respond. mdlphd@casesoftware.com is my email address. But I'd be delighted to talk to you further about this. And so go to my website, and I look forward to meeting you, perhaps at FNCE or some other meeting in the future.
Great. Well, thank you again, Mary. I appreciate everything and hope that you continue to do all this work for all of our benefit.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's been a delight.
All right. Take care. Thanks.